This is Cambridge Assessment, International Education, Cambridge IGCSE Global Perspectives, Paper 1, and it's 0457/12 February, March 2021. In this video, we'll be going through Paper 1, that's 1 by 3 of your whole GP course. You also have your individual report and your team project. But in this video, we'll be focusing on Paper 1. So let's get started. This paper has an insert as well. Okay, we have question 1, study sources 1 to 3, and this is from the insert, so let's go to the insert. Source 1, 2, and 3, okay. So pause the video and go through. Okay, back to our question paper. Okay, the question says, identify the percentage of the world's population, okay, percentage, under the age 25 from source 1. Okay, from source 1, the world's population is young, 42% of people under the age 25. Okay, so it's 42%. Let's put that down. Okay, 1B. Identify 2 challenges for young people from source 2. You can pick any one of these, but be sure to write them entirely. I'm gonna pick ensuring access to secondary education and living with conflict and war. Okay. 1C. Which challenge for young people do you think is the most significant? Explain why. Okay, don't get scared by this question, but you can use the insert passages 1, source 1, 2, and 3 to help you. You can use for example, a lot of people under the age of 25, it's like 42% of the world's population, so it has a lot of people, which means a similar problem can affect them. So you can say it affects most people. Firstly, write down that challenge that you think is the most significant, and then put those points in. For this question, I think I'm gonna take inequality and poverty. Okay, I've listed my challenge. Now I've got to explain why it's the most significant. As you can see that I've taken all of this from the mark scheme, but you can develop this by yourself into complex sentences. Some of these can be found in the insert. For example, it has the greatest impact, probably affects most people. Yeah, we saw that for 42% of people are under the age of 25 in the world. And so you can see that these kind of points can get you 3 marks if you at least list out 3. Okay, let's move on to the next question. 1D. Explain why young people should be a priority for governments. Okay, this question is 6 marks. But don't get scared. You have to cover all the perspectives. For example, global perspective, national perspective, and local perspective. You can even include personal perspective, but all of this shouldn't be from your own side. You should lift it from the insert, but don't just lift it, frame it in your own words, paraphrase it, but do not use any kind of information outside the insert. That won't gain marks. So from here we can see young people are large in population globally. So this is a global perspective. They're large in population. So they might affect us a lot globally. And as you can see in the question paper, it was mentioned, here, that you have to study sources 1 to 3. So it doesn't mean that you can't use even source 3. So you can even use information from source 3. Okay, if you go through source 3, you can see that these highlighted points support our answer. young people care about the future? Because this question says that why should young people be the priority for governments? So because they care about the future, they're involved in shaping the future, they can achieve a fair and stable society, and they are our future. And another thing is they face a lot of challenges. You can put that in your sentence. And from source 1, you can see that they are large in population, and from source 2 you can see that they have a lot of challenges. So just put this all in a sentence and you have almost 6 marks. So young people are large in population, they face many challenges, they are our future, they are involved in shaping the future, they help us achieve a fair, stable, and sustainable society, stuff like that. Just put it in the sentence: global perspective, national perspective, local perspective, personal perspective as well. I've just given you a blueprint. I'm not sure whether I can write this or not, so let's go on to the next question. Okay, question 2, study source 3. Okay, what's source 3? Okay, this one. So just pause the video and go through source 3, and then we'll pick out the strengths and weaknesses. So young people care about the future, that's source 3. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the arguments supporting this claim? Okay, there are some things that you have to consider when concerning strengths and weaknesses. They are the tone of language, range of evidence, counter arguments, whether the source is reliable, and many more things as well, but we'll be focusing on these. So when you talk about the tone of language, is it reasonable? Is it aggressive? Is it persuasive? Is it emotional? And when the range of evidence, like, is it out of date? Is it too long ago published? Or is it a recent one? And then whether they're from reputable or highly esteemed organizations such as WHO, UNESCO. Is it reliable or not? Is the source of evidence given? Stuff like that. When you come to counter arguments, like in source 3, they have already mentioned here the counter arguments. It's something opposite to what he's talking, but he's included it to consider it, and he's taken his decision. And the reliability is whether it's out of date, the evidence is out of date, or the whole article is out of date, or whether it's by a person who's in that field. Is it biased? Does he work for, is he a friend of a young person? Something like that. Does he support an organization for young people? That's sort of reliability. Okay, when you're listing all of this out, you can't just list out strengths, reasonable tone. You can't list out like this. You have to form it in a paragraph. This is a wrong kind of format. If you come back to the source, you can see that they've used information from international organizations like the United Nations. So it's a reliable source of evidence because the United Nations is an international organization. And you can also see here that it's published in Europe in 2019, so it's not that out of date. And this article has a sort of reasonable tone. It's not too emotional, it's not too aggressive, it's polite. It's just reasonable tone. And he has cited information from the United Nations and given the date in which he's taken it from. And he doesn't include too many opinions as well. And he even includes these kind of things. But he doesn't tell the sources of this UK and Scandinavia report. So it's kind of unreliable. We'll write that down. So you can start it off like the writer uses a reasonable tone to state his opinion in this article. He has supported his argument using information from the United Nations, which is a really reputable organization. The piece of information is not out of date because it was published in 2019 and the information was used in 2018. from 2018, sorry. And the writer also considers the counter argument in this paragraph. He supports his argument by telling positive things about young people. And then you can bring in, however, the writer does not include much factual and statistical evidence. I'm just lifting from the mark scheme so that we can get the proper idea of this insert. Source 3. Okay, however, the writer does not appeal much to statistical and factual evidence, and there is some emotional touch to it, like, after all, their future, the exclamatory mark there. And there is some stereotyping, like this one. Media lines often report sensational stories about young people. We don't know how often that is. So just go through many mark schemes to get a lot of points about strengths and weaknesses, and then you'll be able to pick out the strengths and weaknesses from sources like these. Okay, next question. Many older people think that young people are badly behaved. How could you test this claim? You may consider the types of information, sources of evidence, and methods. Okay, this one you have to consider all of them because to obtain maximum mark. Okay, and this little chart might be of help to you. I've used the mark scheme as a guide as well, but this might help you. When you're telling about types of information, you can say that, like for our topic, many older people think that young people are badly behaved. You can compare the statistics and information from the past and present about how many criminal activities have taken place by young people, like at what age. That could help you identify whether they're badly behaved. I'm just using the source as a guide. You can see here criminal behavior and older people. You can use these kind of things, but remember to tell comparing statistics and information from past and present. You could also say you would compare, you can also use individual testimony and materials from case studies, images, clips, video clips, studies, media articles, data from governments, data from city authorities and charities. And these are types of information because they're different types. But when you come to sources of information, you have international organizations. You can also say that I would collect information from research reports, experts, pressure groups, charities, NGOs, media, in the internet, national and local governments and the departments and international organizations on whether young people are badly behaved. And when you come to methods, you can use interviews, questionnaires, surveys, and internet searches like you could conduct surveys, interviews, and questionnaires with relevant experts in the field of young people behavior, and questionnaires, surveys around society on whether they think young people are behaved. So just put all of that into a paragraph and make sure you get 8 marks. Okay, question 3, study source 4. This is source 4. And go through it, pause the video. Okay, question 3, identify a value judgment from Hannah's statement. Explain why it's a value judgment. A value judgment is a belief or view based upon moral or ethical principles of right or wrong. So you can't judge whether that statement is right or wrong. It might be right to some people and sometimes wrong to other people. We need to find a statement like that from Hannah's argument. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 value judgments in Hannah's statement argument. So just pick them up and put, because you can't judge whether, but to make good decisions, different points of view need to be considered. You can't judge whether this is right or wrong. The same principle goes with the others. It's important that politicians listen to young people, right, to give young people a chance and let them contribute to government. You can't judge whether these are right or wrong, so they're value judgments. So just pick one of these and write them down over here. Remember to give only one because we only require one. And always write the definition of what you're asked, like value judgment, right? The definition of value judgment. Then biased, right? The definition of bias, opinion, fact, like that. Question 3b. Kaito is arguing that older people should hold positions in power. Identify one fact from Kaito's statement. Okay, a fact is something which is true or accurate and can be verified. Let's get an example here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Oh, sorry. That's 6. So pick any one. Okay, and this is the fact that I've chosen. Okay, question 3b2. Explain how well this fact supports Kaito's argument. So when they ask you these kind of questions, you have to explain why the fact supports his arguments. You can say that it's relevant to the argument. It's based on research and evidence. And sometimes if the fact doesn't support the argument at all, or it's not efficient enough, you can say it's out of date, or you can say does not give much support because it's not relevant to the argument. So just put that. You have to give 2 kinds of points. Just take it from the mark scheme and keep flipping through. You'll get it. Okay, we have question 3c. Okay, this is the kind of questions where they ask which argument is more convincing. So you have to consider the strengths and weaknesses, reasoning, evidence, use of language, different kinds of information. So you can consider the use of evidence, the tone of language, and where the evidence is brought from. Is it from a reliable source, like the UN or WHO, international organizations? And then you can talk about how the argument is structured, like it has a logical structure. You can also say that it is logical and well structured, and for the other argument that doesn't suit you so much, you can say it's unlikely. When you talk about the tone of language, express whether it's precise, emotional, exaggerated, and you can even talk about the clarity of the argument. So when you come to reasoning, you have logic, structure, balance, claims. Balance is whether they consider counter arguments. Structure is whether it's clearly structured or properly structured. And logic is whether does it make sense or is it relevant. Claims are like opinions, but they should be factual or it should be trustworthy. Okay, the evidence part is really important because you have a lot of things under it. Okay, so I'm gonna go one by one. Let's go with relevance. Relevance is whether the piece of evidence or information is relevant to the topic. Does it support his argument? Sufficiency is whether he given enough information that supports his argument. Source is whether it's from a reputable organization or not, like an international organization or something private. And date is just how back it was published, like is it long time ago. Types of information: fact, opinion, not value judgment, fact and opinion, anecdotal. What kind of type of information is it? Is it a useful kind of information? Does it support his argument? Testimony is expert testimony and life accounts from experts in the field. And range of information and depth is like, has he used a lot of information like statistics or data reports, stuff like that. Okay, next you have the source of bias. I'm going to give you some examples. Suppose a person is working in an office and there are too many migrants in the country. And so the migrants work better than the person who is working in the office and gets his salary decreased. So he might say that migrants should be banned from the countries because if they were banned, it would support him and increase his salary. So he is biased towards this situation. Okay, another thing is some people might say more people should drive motorbikes. So only the people who are interested, and sometimes people who are interested in motorcycles would say, yeah, this is a good idea. But there are some potential risks which they're not going to consider because if they were permitted to drive motorcycles, then they would enjoy it. And so do you have a source of bias there? So when you consider this, you have local interests, economic, personal values, experience. So these you have to consider this like interest towards the subject. Economic, is it going to financially support them if they support that argument? The personal values, what kind of personality, like personal values, experience, have they experienced something similar or do they have some sort of connection with it before? That's all about bias. Okay, suppose you choose that Kaito has a better argument than Anna. So you have to say good points about Kaito, but you also have to say a bit like he may have 9 points that are good about him. He has to have at least one or two against him because nothing is perfect. And for Hannah, you have to tell all the things that have not satisfied you, like unlikely structure or lack of evidence, aggressive tone, and then you should say something that is contradictory. So you should have some balance between the positive and negative points. Remember, you can't say that both of the arguments are good. You have to have one person's argument with you. You should choose only one. Never tell that both of them are good and believable. So that's it for this question. If you have more doubts, go to the mark scheme. It will be of great help. Okay, question 4. These kind of questions want to ask you what option you would choose for the, well, decision making. Like here we have a government wants to improve the lives of young people, providing more education, training for young people, lower the voting age so that young people can vote in elections, involve young people in this decision making about local issues. So you have to choose one of these and they're being considered, and in these you should tell why you chose it and why you didn't choose the other. Suppose I choose provide more education and training for young people. I should say I should give in the benefits of choosing this option, and I also should give the disadvantages of the other two. Like, why didn't I choose them? Why is this particular option better than the other two? So always choose one, don't choose two. Sometimes the reasons may be that if you lower the voting age, you have to, sometimes the reason might be financial. Like people, like for example, if I take this one, you have finance. People can give so much of money for so many people to study. So that's a drawback of this. Like that, you can explain some drawbacks of the other two that you found. And always consider the different arguments and perspectives. Some people might say, no, this option is better than this option. You have to consider them and give alternatives, some other alternative method to avoid clashes or the better option being eliminated. In this question, you can use the information that you got from the insert, source 1, 2, 3, and 4. Never use information that's outside bounds, always from the insert. If you need more help with this question, it is a kind of complicated question. I think 24 marks. Yeah, 24 marks. You really need help from the mark scheme. That would really help you. So you can include information about how many people are going to be affected. Not information, but like how much people, like a lot of people are going to be affected or impacted if we take this. You don't have the number of people who are affected. You can say that the amount of people, like most people are going to be affected or impacted by the option. You can explain how long it might take, like provide more education and training. It's going to take longer than involving young people in decision making. You can also explain the challenges you might face in implementing, like elderly people might think that it's a wrong idea. So I'm just getting it from the mark scheme. The mark scheme is a real guide. So that's the end of this video. Be sure to like, comment, and share on this video, and also subscribe if you liked it and found it helpful and useful. Most of the questions were given blueprints because they were quite lengthy, but I hope it will be quite useful for you. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.